Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. I know we're going to talk all about this a little bit more at the end of the show, but it's been a rough week for you, my friend John Sapichetti. First, your guy Aaron Rodgers craps the bed in the playoffs. We're going to talk about that plenty. Then the Baseball Writers Association of America.
I'll go along with that.
They snub your guy Barry Bonds for the 10th consecutive year. I mean, on one of the Aaron Rodgers thing, I'm not gonna lie to you, I was kind of happy to see him get eliminated. Barry Bonds thing is ridiculous. We can talk about that a little bit towards the end too. Your guy Roger Federer not competing in the Australian Open, correct?
Yes, he's recovering from knee surgery. He's also 40, so I don't know how many more tournaments he has left. Djokovic was not able to perform because he's not vaccinated, and now Nadal is in the finals. If Nadal wins, which he probably will, he'll surpass both Federer and Djokovic for the most Grand Slam titles with 21. I'm more comfortable with Nadal.
Another tough thing for you.
Well, 2/3 of his Grand Slams are at the French Open. So my guy has won more titles spread out the Australian Open, the US Open, Wimbledon. So I still think Roger's the greatest player ever. Yeah. And then I sit down last night, want to watch LeBron play the 76ers, and he's out with load management or a sore knee. So, my guys haven't been very kind to me the last 7 days.
No, and I was also going to say, and LeBron, also not kind to you in regards to, he had an Instagram post where after beating the very difficult Orlando Magic said, mention me with MJ and Brady. Okay.
Well, I would. I mean, again, he hasn't won as much as
the timing is weird. The timing was weird. The timing is weird.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously when you beat Orlando, you definitely should, pull out your, and expose it to everyone and say I'm the greatest. But I'm
pretty sure Brady didn't do that after beating the Bills for the 40th consecutive time when he was with with the Patriots.
Or Rodgers did do it when he beat Chicago and says I own you, which I don't know what that means because Chicago is never a factor in the NFC. But yeah, I mean LeBron decided to do that. Look, we've talked about this a million times. I think LeBron's the greatest player ever. I think Brady are very similar in many ways in that they've lasted so long, and now we see Brady's won a Super Bowl with a second team. Who knows if he goes to a third team next year? We've seen LeBron win titles with 3 different teams. So yeah, he's kind of in that category. But I don't think he needs to say that. Other people can say it for him. But he must have been feeling good about himself after that huge win last week over the Magic, because the Magic have all of 2 home wins this year. So the Lakers were able to go down there and put together a great effort to beat them.
Yes, and Shaq was there at that game. I saw that because I saw, I don't know if you saw, and we're going to get into the show in a second. If you saw the Shaq Den a Fool last night, I know you were watching some of the TNT because they announced Draymond Green and the All-Star starters, 2 separate stories, but it really showed like a highlight of Russell Westbrook's misses this season. Oh boy.
It's a blooper.
Hit the top of the backboard a lot.
Oh, a lot. I mean, his turnovers aren't, he's really trying to create something and someone made a really great defensive play or his guy couldn't handle the ball. His turnovers look like something out of, I wouldn't even say high school, the level before high school, junior high school. And his shots, I mean, I saw one game earlier in the week where he had like a wide open 3. No one guarded him because why the hell would you guard him out there? Like, go ahead, take the 3. You can't really make it. And it was an air ball by 3 feet. Like that's like something I would do.
Here's my theory on why he's hit the top of the backboard when he's shooting so much. Are you ready for this, Sep?
He can't see. I mean, I see him wearing these.
No, that's a good one. I think that's a good one. It might be that, but here's my theory. I think that he is practicing 3-point shots with a medicine ball. And when he gets the real basketball with just the air in it, he's just shooting,
he's too strong.
Watching it like it's a medicine ball and overshooting it. That's my theory, is that for some reason he thought it's cool to practice with an 8-pound medicine ball, and with the basketball, he's just launching it.
Yeah, I buy that. That makes sense.
That's the best I got.
Yeah, he's a workout warrior. I mean, the guy is in great shape. He never misses games. He's full of energy, especially on the offensive side of the ball, not necessarily on the defensive side of the ball. Yeah, no, it's a blooper reel. Every morning on Undisputed with Skip and Shannon, Skip, we'll run like the previous night's turnovers and missed shots. And, you could just play it with the music behind it of like,
Benny Hill.
or Benny Hill, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's perfect. I mean, he is just. I think he's always been like this, except now he's playing for the Lakers. He's not playing in Houston. He's not playing with Washington. He's not playing in Oklahoma City. So now more people are paying attention to him because he's playing with LeBron James and for the Los Angeles Lakers. So there are more eyes on him. And I get that he played in Oklahoma City with Kevin Durant, but the Thunder are not quite the Lakers when it comes to brand. But it's not worked out well. And I don't know what the Lakers are going to be able to do. I mean, we keep hearing of a swap of Russell Westbrook for John Wall. I mean, that's one bag of crap for another bag of crap.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to point out that, you're a real trooper, Sep, because it's been not a great week for you.
No.
And so, I appreciate you being on the show. That's, and our audience hopefully will feel the same. Let me see if I can make you feel any better, Sep. Your guy, LeBron James, ties the record for most All-Star appearances, 18, his 18th All-Star game. I believe his 18th start in an All-Star game, right? He's started every one he's played in, I'm imagining.
Yeah. Yes.
So that's got to make you feel pretty good. He's got that nice feather in his cap as the All-Stars for starters for both conferences were announced last night. Sap, there was obviously one major surprise we're going to talk about in a second. Outside of that surprise, how did you feel about the starters?
I think they pretty much got it right. I was very happy to see John Morant make it. Happy to see Trae Young make it. I mean, you could maybe debate whether he should start or not, but he's certainly an all-star. The heavyweights all made it, right? Embiid and Jokic at center, LeBron, Giannis, Durant. I mean, we know these guys are deserving and are the most popular players in the league. Same thing with Steph Curry. I was glad to see DeMar DeRozan also make it because the Bulls earned it. Absolutely. They've been arguably the best team in the Eastern Conference this year, right there in contention with, believe it or not, Miami and Cleveland. I mean, the East has been very interesting this year with some surprise teams. So for the most part, yeah, I think they got it right. LeBron was the leading vote getter. He'll captain his team. Durant led the Eastern Conference in votes. He'll captain his team, but he won't play. And then next week they'll have the reserves and they'll have that draft, which is kind of fun. The only thing I'll say though, Jed, is if we're at the point now where it's not really conference versus conference, do you have to have 12 from each conference? I mean, if one conference is better, why not put 14 from one conference, 10 from another conference? Because it's not based on the conference. It's just all-stars that are selected by LeBron and Kevin Durant, and maybe do away with positions even. Like there may be, 7 small forwards that deserve it or 3 big guards, whatever. That just put the 24 best players in the game and let LeBron and Durant draft them.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I think that would be the best way to go forward, because then you have really the best display of talent that the league has to offer. Though there's contractual things that go with the All-Star game, and so they want to make sure the CBA says, okay, you got to have an even amount from the East and the West, and so
right.
There's all these mechanisms that prevent that from happening, unfortunately. But certainly, bare minimum, I have no problem with them doing away with positions. I think that's a fantastic idea because the NBA hasn't gone completely positionless, as some people like to claim, but certainly more than it was, 10 years ago. And so I don't think that's going to prevent anybody from making it. And also the biggest thing that I think needs to happen in terms of all-star reform, Sap, and this is directly because of the guy we're going to talk about right now. Andrew Wiggins is an all-star starter. The fans need to get their votes taken away from them. We've lost our privileges. I'm sorry. Andrew Wiggins, good, very nice story, that he sort of redeemed himself at being in Golden State, and he's turned his career around after being, brought in with so much hype as the number 1 pick and kind of struggling to justify all that hype when he was in Minnesota. I'm happy for him. I'm not sure he's an all-star this year, let alone an all-star starter.
Right, exactly. And again, we go back to position. He's considered a forward, right? So LeBron was 1 forward from the Western Conference, and now Andrew Wiggins is the 2nd forward from the Western Conference. Wouldn't it make more sense if Devin Booker started over Andrew
100%.
Wiggins? No, he's a
close.
guard. He's a guard. And look, Phoenix has pretty much by far the best record in basketball, and they're not going to have a starter. Now, obviously, Booker's going to make it. Chris Paul's going to make it. I don't know if DeAndre Ayton will make it. There's some other good big guys in the Western Conference that have had really good years. But yeah, why not do that? And again, this isn't necessarily a slight against Andrew Wiggins. He's had a nice year. He's just not deserving of being a starter. Maybe deserves to make the team because Golden State's right there with Phoenix for the best record in the West, and Draymond's been hurt, and Klay Thompson just came back recently, so maybe you need a second member of the Warriors to make it. And I could be fine with Wiggins making the All-Star team, but not necessarily as a starter.
Yeah, I mean, I would think if he makes the All-Star team, I would say he'd be the last guy that I would put in.
Right.
He wasn't a popular vote getter amongst the other two factions that vote. It's made up of the fans get the largest percentage of that voting tally, 50%. Media gets 25%, and players get 25%. That's how they total the All-Star voting, and they did this, Sap, because you remember back in like the Yao Ming days, he would just it was like a joke. Like he would be the top vote getter by, millions and millions of votes because all of China would vote for him.
Mhm.
And then guys like Zaza Pachulia were getting really high fan votes because they were, teams were running campaigns for players, and it was getting silly. So the NBA, I think, thought that they had rectified it with this, but I think this Andrew Wiggins thing shows that the fans cannot have the responsibility of voting for all-star starters anymore.
And I can only think of one thing, Jet. Perhaps the Warriors have a national brand. I mean, we see when they go on the road that it seems like they have more fans there than the home team has fans. Certainly when they were in Brooklyn, Brooklyn has no base, right? I mean, they have no fan base. They're not even the most popular team in their own city. It's the Knicks. So maybe all these fans that go out even to road games just decide to vote for Andrew Wiggins. I mean, it would have been really bad if Klay Thompson had made it. And look, Klay deserves to be an all-star every year he plays, just not this year because he's only come back a few weeks ago. I think Draymond always belongs in there because of his incredible defense. And you see what Golden State has been without him this year. It's shocking. I mean, he's the glue guy, right? He's a rebounder. He's an excellent passer. The offense flows through him, and he's a tremendous defender. Without him, they're not quite the same team, but he's missed a lot of games. So, yeah, I just think that of the 10 starters that were announced last night, Wiggins is the one that you say, this one doesn't quite fit. He doesn't belong there.
Yeah. In terms of the basketball, NBC Sports, their basketball page did a breakdown of how, what the voting went for. The media's preference for that spot was Rudy Gobert. He got 65-4. So it wasn't close between him and Wiggins. Wiggins got 4 media votes. Gobert got 65. The media also voted for Draymond Green over Wiggins by a 20-4 margin. And the players, I believe, voted for Draymond Green also.
Yeah. I mean, I would probably go there because of his defense, right? I mean, and again, that's a big part of it. Obviously, we just normally just look at the leading scorers, but Gobert's a center, right? And so is Nikola Jokic. So how do they?
Yeah, but now I think they just call it a big. I think that
okay.
Yeah. I think that's how the voting works. Sorry, front court. That's how they do it. They break it down by back court, front court.
Yeah, I mean, you could maybe make a case for Karl Anthony Towns. He's had a good year, and Minnesota is above 500 for like the first time that I can remember. So maybe he would have been. There were a lot of better choices than Andrew Wiggins. So if we're going to the front court, yeah, Gobert makes more sense. Draymond makes more sense. Karl Anthony Towns makes more sense. The thing is, a lot of the guys that normally win have missed time, right? Like Luka Doncic has missed time, and he's considered a backcourt guy. And obviously, right. Steph and Morant should be the starting backcourt in the Western Conference. Although, you could make a case for Devin Booker. He's right there with those two guys. But I think also it's because Steph is one of the 3 most popular players in the league. He just broke the 3-point mark. He's incredibly popular. And then now John Morant is like the shiny new toy. He's like the new guy that you watch SportsCenter for to see what the hell did he do the night before. So that makes all the sense in the world. I think the fans want to see John Morant and Steph Curry start the game, and so do I.
Yeah, I think, the biggest thing, Sap, to not just taking away the fans aspect of vote, because I do believe that we can't be responsible for something like this. Is like you said, I think do away with the positions, and then you'll naturally just get the best players in there. Like,
Right.
it's hard to, like, okay, again, Andrew Wiggins, it's a nice story. I don't want to sound like I'm bashing the guy, and he's having a good year, 18 points a game, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, but those aren't all-star numbers, Sap. So I would say, like, wouldn't you rather see, you mentioned Devin Booker, Luka Doncic, Chris Paul, Donovan Mitchell. I know they're all listed as guards, but I'd rather see any one of those guys.
Sure.
I think is more deserving than Andrew Wiggins to start, certainly to be in the game. And if it's a showcase of the NBA's best talent, again, no offense to Andrew Wiggins, but like Doncic, Booker, Paul, Mitchell, like those guys, way better talents than him.
Oh, without question. And he's a front court guy averaging 4 rebounds a game.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't speak highly
of
him,
his
right?
thing. Yeah.
No, I mean, Chris Paul's averaging more rebounds per game than him, and he's 5'11". Steph Curry's averaging more rebounds per game than Andrew Wiggins, and he's out in the perimeter most of the game. So, it's this is what happens. It's a nice story for him. He's played well for them, and they're a contending team, but they did get it wrong this time.
Yeah. But I agree with you. The rest of the starters, totally makes sense to me. I'm a big Trae Young fan. When we did our early MVP ladder, I had him on there. I don't really blame him for the team not playing particularly well. Like, his numbers are better than they were last year. He's still playing outstanding. Their defense is just god awful. He's a horrible defender, but I don't think that surprised anybody. They have the number 1 ranked offense, Sap, the Hawks, the past month, and I think dead last defense in the NBA. So you can see what's going wrong with the Hawks.
Bet the over every time Atlanta plays, right? They're going to score points, give up points. Again, that's him. He's not a real good defender. The team isn't a good defensive. Absolutely, we want to see Trae Young out there. But like I said, if we're going to have the 2 captains select the players, then who cares what the positions are, and who cares which conference they come from, because they're going to be selected by the 2 captains, and they can kind of figure it out. If there's 4 big guys that make it, say Embiid, Gobert, Jokic, and say Karl Anthony Towns, well, in most cases, LeBron will take 2 of them, especially the 2 that may be soon to be free agents, so he can recruit them. And then Durant will take 2 of them, so they'll kind of cross each other off, and then you go from there. So, there's a lot of different ways to rectify this. But normally they get the voting right. You don't normally see a guy that's not quite worthy of being an all-star, let alone an all-star starter, make it as a starter. But in this particular case, that's what happened. And again, it's because of the large reach of the Golden State Warriors. They're a national brand. A lot of fans, go to games when the Warriors are on the road. And I would just assume that they're punching a lot of ballots for the Warriors.
Yeah, I do, like to look at how the voting breaks down for this, because, I find it interesting because I'm like you, just a basketball junkie and want to know everything that goes into this. Some things that just stood out to me. The fact that Kyrie Irving got so many votes is annoying. Just really, really sticks in my craw. He also got a decent amount of player votes. What the hell is that about?
Is he played 10 games here? I don't think
so.
No, I told you the players love him. He's one of the most respected players among the players. How many times have I called him the Odell Beckham Jr. of basketball? Same thing with Odell Beckham Jr. Like, everybody in the NFL raves about him and think he's the most gifted wide receiver in the sport. And at times he can be, but he's just not dependable and reliable, kind of like Kyrie. But they're enamored with talent. The players are. The fans do like Kyrie as much as he's, out there. His game is incredibly entertaining to watch. But a guy that hasn't played 10 games, and we're already, having teams play 44, 45 games. I know that there's a lot of load management in the NBA, and with Kyrie, it's because of the vaccine, and guys do miss a lot of games, but you got to play more than 10 games to be eligible for the All-Star game. That does seem a bit ridiculous.
Yeah, he got 25 votes amongst the players. I'd love to know who those guys were. He got more votes amongst the players, Sap, than Jaylen Brown, Bradley Beal, Terry Rozier, Drew Holiday, Tyler Hero, guys
Crazy.
who play what, he got more. This isn't fan vote. This isn't idiot fan votes. These are the players.
Players. Yeah. Unless the players aren't aware he's not playing. Maybe they don't follow the league. I'll guarantee you one player who didn't vote for him was probably James Harden. who was his teammate, probably was like, no, he doesn't belong to be in the All-Star game. I'm hoping LaMelo Ball had more votes than Kyrie, because I hope he makes the All-Star team, because I think he's a wildly popular player, and that team's been really good, and he's the most likely All-Star. Again, you never know if there's just too many guards in a certain conference, and it's complicated. Maybe they expand the roster to 15 per side. They have 30 players instead of 24.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly all that sort of stuff is possible. I can tell you LaMelo Ball did get more votes amongst the players. He got 39 votes, which was good for sixth best amongst backcourt guys in the Eastern Conference. It's the backcourt in the Eastern Conference is tough because, like you said, you mentioned Harden, also the two guys who are in, Young and DeRozan. Zach LaVine certainly had a real case to be an all-star starter. Fred VanVleet's been playing fantastic. Darius Garland's been playing fantastic, and his team's really good. Tyler Hero is on the team that has the best record in the East, and he's been playing really, really well, especially because they've been dealing with a lot of injuries. Jaylen Brown, when he's been healthy, has been putting up good numbers. Terry Rozier has been having a really nice year for himself. Yeah, there's a lot of guys in the East who are deserving. That's not even to mention, like guys like Drew Holiday, who's on a really good team. And so it's tough. It's tough to make it in the East. But yeah, just a couple interesting notes. The Kyrie thing really pisses me off, Sap.
You just don't like him, and I know what you mean, but not. But again, if you've played so few games, you should not be in consideration for the All-Star game. We've seen that in other sports, though. In baseball, sometimes a guy doesn't play a lot and he makes it, but that's generally when the player's in his last year. Like growing up, Carl Yastrzemski and Johnny Bench both made the All-Star team in 1983, but they were both like on the precipice of retiring. So you knew this was the last time around. Derek Jeter or Cal Ripken Jr. is like, okay, we know this guy is going to retire this year. Let's put him in the All-Star game. Be a final time for the fans to say thank you and goodbye. So not a guy like Kyrie, who's not even 30 yet, who the hell knows how much longer he's going to play or what his situation is. But yeah, I mean, if you go to 15 on each roster, now the average time that a player will play is 16 minutes, which, you want to see the real stars play more than 16 minutes. But there's always 2 or 3 guys on an all-star team that are like, I'm comfortable playing 6 or 8 minutes. I'll just take, the time to rest up. I mean, how many times do we see Tim Duncan, especially late in his career, play like 7 minutes? He just sat on the bench looking disinterested. I think a few times Al Horford went and was like, okay.
LeBron did it last year.
Yeah. I mean, I think this year he might put on a show because, he was playing great last year too, but maybe he decides to, go nuts and score 34 points in the All-Star game.
Well, it's in Cleveland, right? So I'm sure he's got a lot of family probably going to be at the game.
Yeah, exactly. So, that'd be interesting. I hope the Cavaliers have someone there. Darius Garland obviously makes the most sense. I don't think you'll see any rookies, although Evan Mobley's been the best rookie so far this year.
No rookies this year. I don't think so.
No, I don't see any rookies. And the only Cavalier I think that will make it will be Darius Garland, but he deserves it. That seems really good.
I'd put him in over someone like Jaylen Brown, who maybe has a little bit better numbers, but missed games and the team's been more disappointing. Yep. I would put him in there.
Yeah. He's played really well.
One last note before we start talking about James Harden, who you mentioned, Sap. Only one player holds the distinction of getting not a single fan vote, player vote, or media vote. So I guess that's the NBA's version of Mr. Irrelevant.
That's pretty.
Georgios Kalaitzakis. He was the last pick in the draft last year from the Milwaukee Bucks. Not a single fan voted for him. Not even himself. Not even a family member. So sorry, Georgios.
So he got as many votes as I did.
He did. He did, in fact, get as many votes as you did. Tough break.
That is a tough break. I mean, just get a friend to vote for you or something.
No, sorry, he couldn't. He didn't.
Too bad he wasn't up for the Baseball Hall of Fame. Someone would have voted for him, right? They voted for someone voted for Jonathan Papelbon. So why not?
Watch next year. He's gonna be like the 5th highest vote getter amongst the stupid fans.
Yes.
But we were talking about how James Harden is pissed off at Kyrie Irving, and there's lots of reports coming out there, which makes sense. If I was Kyrie's teammate, I'd be pissed off at him too. A lot of speculation surrounding James Harden's future now, specifically tying him to the Philadelphia 76ers and his old general manager, Daryl Morey. We know Daryl Morey loves James Harden, covets James Harden. And now we're hearing reports that James Harden is going to test the waters in free agency this offseason. That doesn't mean he's going to necessarily leave the Nets, because that would mean he's leaving not just Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, but a lot of money on the table. But the fact that he is going to explore free agency, and that there is a clear suitor in him that wants him desperately in the Sixers, and that they have the mechanism to get it via a Ben Simmons trade, makes things very interesting. So where do you see this as it stands right now, Sap?
Well, for the longest time, I thought Ben Simmons for Kyrie Irving made sense, but maybe Ben Simmons for James Harden makes even more sense. Harden had the opportunity to go to Philadelphia last year, but he chose Brooklyn because he wanted to play with Durant and Kyrie Irving. A pretty smart choice on his part. It just didn't work last year, and it really hasn't worked this year because Kyrie's not vaccinated. Now Durant's out. Philadelphia, I think, would be a very good place for him, because I think he and Embiid would work well together. Don't you think? I mean, Harden, as much as people like to criticize him, he's one of the few players I've ever seen that's an elite scorer and an elite passer. Like LeBron's that guy too. There's just not a lot of guys that can do both at an incredibly high level. And Harden is one of those guys. And he started to play better now. I think he's kind of adjusted to the officiating, and the officiating has kind of gone back to the norm, and he's still going to the free throw line a lot. And he's playing well. I mean, you know, we look at what's happened in Brooklyn. He's been the most durable of those three guys. Doesn't take much, but he has been. So at some point, though, don't you think that Philadelphia has to do something with Ben Simmons? Joel Embiid's playing right now, I think, is the MVP of the league. He's playing at an incredibly high level. Give him help. It's not going to be Ben Simmons. He's not going to come back and play. Try to put something together with Simmons and maybe another piece, whatever the case may be. Send Simmons to Brooklyn, and that's going to help them, which Philadelphia doesn't necessarily want to do. But Philadelphia would help itself a ton by bringing in James Harden. To me, that makes a ton of sense. And now you'd have those two teams better to go along with the defending champion Bucks, the Heat, who are playing at a very high level, Chicago, Cleveland. The East becomes deeper and deeper and deeper. Daryl Morey keeps talking about he's going to dig in on Ben Simmons, even if it's for 4 years. I think that's just being stubborn. At some point, you've got to move the asset and get something in return. And getting James Harden's not exactly the worst thing. I'm just worrying if Daryl, who did he learn under? Danny Ainge. Doesn't this seem like a Danny Ainge type maneuver? Like, I'm not giving in unless I throttle the other team in a trade, rather than get as much as I can for a distressed asset at this point. And Ben Simmons, I think it would be fascinating to see that happen. Because I think if Harden doesn't want to stay in Brooklyn, don't they have to move him unless it's in the offseason with a sign and trade? But you're not going to get as much back as you could before the trade deadline.
Yeah, you know, I look at this a couple of ways. One, it's the extremely rare double hostage situation that's going on in Philadelphia, where Ben Simmons is holding the team hostage and the team is holding Ben Simmons hostage. So you don't know who's pointing the gun at who. It's not a good situation, but it's terrible. I can't remember a worse situation with a player and a team that's, you know, obviously that's outside of the purview of legal trouble. Like, this is as ugly as it gets. As far as a trade for James Harden goes, Sap, the reason I don't think Brooklyn would acquiesce to that, even if they feel like they're going to lose him in the offseason, I just don't see them trying to help Philadelphia in any way, shape, or form, because it's direct competition to them.
Yep. No, I mean, we see this all the time, right? I mean, we're going to see this in the football offseason. If Aaron Rodgers walks into the Packers and said, I want to get traded, most likely Green Bay is going to want to trade him to the AFC. They don't want to trade him within the NFC. So that's, again, when Harden got traded from Houston, where'd he go? The Eastern Conference. Generally, you don't trade a guy within your own conference, especially another contending team. I think both teams would be helped by that type of trade. I think Simmons would fit in perfectly with Durant and Kyrie Irving, because he's defense, rebound, he's an excellent playmaker. And, you know, Durant and Kyrie can pretty much take care of your offense if Kyrie's playing.
Do we know if he's vaccinated? Weren't there some questions about Simmons' vaccine status too?
Yeah, no one's even gotten that far because he's not playing. Yeah, I mean, that's a question that the Brooklyn Nets would have to find an answer to, right?
It's the last thing they want to trade for another guy.
Yeah, it's like you're on the verge of a mega trade, and you find, oh, by the way, Ben Simmons is not vaccinated, so he can only play half the games, and here's Kevin Durant's going to play, with Joe Harris as his second best player, but on the road they're going to be a wagon with Kyrie right. Irving and Ben Simmons. So yeah, it is kind of strange. It doesn't seem like it's a likely trade because you're right. I mean, you could really hurt your organization. I think getting James Harden will help Philadelphia. I'm confident in that. As much as there's criticism of James Harden's game, the guy does play and he does produce. And I think he worked wonderfully with Joel Embiid. Simmons
I don't think he makes teams worse. I mean, that would be the only drawback is if you think that, but he doesn't.
Yeah, he's a baller. I mean, as much as, again, he goes out there, he plays, he puts up numbers. Again, he's comfortable being a facilitator. In fact, I think last year he loved it that there wasn't pressure on him to score because that's not his thing. I think in the end, he still likes to be a facilitator more than a scorer, especially in the postseason. So, yeah, I think Philadelphia would get the player that they covet because they wanted him last year when he was being moved out of Houston. Simmons is a wild card because who the hell knows, he could come back, play for the rest of the year, and then in the summer go, I'm all done with basketball, where I don't think that's going to happen with Harden. I think like I said, he's a baller. Harden seems to be turned off by Brooklyn for whatever reasons. I think the Kyrie situation is tough. Maybe he doesn't want to play on the East Coast. Maybe it's the 14% state tax. I mean, if you're going to re-up for $250 million, that's a lot of money. You're talking $35 million in taxes.
Right. He was just in Texas before that, which is with zero, no right?
Yeah. Right. So that's like a huge difference. One out of every $7 you earn goes to the state in New York, where none of it goes to the state in Texas. So that is a big situation. So I don't know what the strip club situation is in Brooklyn. Are they open? I mean, that's probably a big concern for him because we know he likes to frequent them. So,
the weather, I think I've read too.
The weather. He's a Southern California guy, and not everybody's cut out for the East Coast. Not everybody loves playing here.
No, but I mean, those things are still a factor in Philadelphia.
Very true, and actually, the fan base is, I think, even more insane.
Oh yeah,
there is no. I don't think there's
no tolerance.
I don't think there's much pressure playing in Brooklyn. Like I said, I don't think anyone cares.
No, there's no pressure playing in Brooklyn.
Playing in Philadelphia, there'd be an inordinate amount of pressure. So that's a great point, Jet. So maybe he's just going to, finish the year and go re-sign
back to Houston
somewhere, go back to Houston, or maybe he'll show up on the Lakers. I mean, but you're talking about, it's going to be difficult to sign him because you're going to need the money to sign a guy for, $45-50 million.
Yeah. And he doesn't strike me as the guy that's going to give back any money.
No,
he's not going to sign a team friendly deal.
No, not at all.
Nor should he. I'm not criticizing it. He shouldn't. He should get as much as he can.
I mean, but I'm assuming that he wants to win a championship, right? Because he's now starting to get into the conversation as the greatest player in the history of the sport without a championship. My opinion, it's Elgin Baylor, followed by Charles Barkley, followed by Karl Malone. And, Chris Paul and James Harden may be number 4 and 5. Those would probably be the 5 greatest players. Yeah. I mean, then you can get into Patrick Ewing and, a few other guys, but he's one of the 5 greatest players in the history of the sport without a championship. He's a better player than Russell Westbrook historically, right? I think we can agree with that.
I would say so.
I
think it's close, but I would give the slight nod to Harden.
Yeah, I would too. He's better. He's a more efficient scorer. I think he's a better passer. Neither guy plays defense, so leave that out of it.
Better than Carmelo?
Yeah. Historically, I would agree. Yeah. Because he's won an MVP. He's won scoring titles. He's led the league in assists. Yeah, he's better than Carmelo. To me, it's still Elgin Baylor as the greatest player without a championship. Technically, he did win one, but he got hurt early in the year and retired, like in December 71, and then they won it in the spring 72. I don't know if it gave him a winner's share, a ring, or whatever. But then I would say Barkley, Malone, Chris Paul, and Harden. That would round out the 5 guys, the 5 greatest players without a championship. So does he want to get off that list? So it's like, I got to go play for a team that's close to winning a championship. But again, that's not always that easy to do. Is he going to?
No, I mean, this seemed like a fait accompli with Brooklyn until, Kyrie blew the whole damn thing up.
Yeah. I mean, and they lost last year in overtime of Game 7. Look, if Kyrie was healthy in that series and Harden wasn't hurt, the Nets would have won the championship last year. Because Durant was playing at an incredibly high level, and those 2 guys were good enough to get through. But then, Kyrie gets hurt in Game 4, and Durant was carrying himself on about 50% through that series after injuring the hamstring in game one, or the groin, whichever it was. So, yeah, I mean, if that's a big part of what he wants to do, which I would hope it is, in the end, when you retire, it's nice to look back and say, hey, I did win a championship. Even if you're not the best player on the roster, you still did it.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I obviously think that if he was in Philadelphia, it would be a phenomenal fit. And I think that's what Embiid has been waiting for, somebody to take just a little bit of scoring pressure off of him. I mean, he's for virtually his whole career that he's been healthy, he hasn't had a real secondary scoring option.
No. I mean, his second.
Tobias Harris is a third scoring option.
Right.
He's not a second. Ben Simmons, same thing, third scoring option. James Harden would take a tremendous amount of pressure off of Joel Embiid, who's getting quadruple teamed and putting up 40.
Yeah, I mean, to me, Embiid's the MVP of the league right now. He's playing at a ridiculous level, and there's a lot of guys that are deserving of that. But he just has been very consistent this year on both ends of the court. So, yeah, I mean, I think Embiid, Harden would work great together. I really do. I mean, because Harden is such a good facilitator. He can drive to the basket. Yeah, I mean, just how many alley-oops would he hit Embiid with? I mean, it would be, poetry in motion. But again, I don't know if the Nets are going to go ahead and say, yeah, here's James Harden.
Yeah, I don't think so.
That much. So that's what makes it difficult. And what Western team is going to go after James Harden? I mean, at that point, I think he probably just finishes the year there and then goes into free agency. And maybe the Nets re-sign him. Maybe they win the title. Who knows? With that team, anything's up for grabs.
Yeah, I mean, just the name that popped into my head. Two names that popped in my head: Dallas and the Clippers. I don't know what either team's tax situation is off the top of my head, but I think those are two teams that would certainly fit. I think that him next to Kawhi and Paul George would obviously they'd be the favorites, and him next to Luka would be really interesting.
Yeah, it would be. And if Harden goes there, be the three Southern California guys playing in Southern California. And it might not matter for this year if Kawhi doesn't come back, but that would be a lethal team, to be quite honest with you, because Harden would be probably lead the league in assists with Kawhi and Paul George. Take all that pressure off of those guys. That would be that would be a sick big three. Because because George and Kawhi are both, elite defenders. So that would be tough to deal with.
I think that it's far more likely he leaves in free agency than Brooklyn trades him.
At this point, they've got to be all in for this year, right? Because now, don't forget, Jet, this is year 3 of Durant and Kyrie. Let's not forget, Durant wasn't there for year 1. He was out with the Achilles. Kyrie,
they're not willing to take a step back.
Yeah, this is got to happen sooner rather than later. How dependable is Kyrie? Not very. Durant's always kind of hurt, and now Harden's talking about going away. So they may just say, we're all in this year, and then we'll deal with it.
Yeah. I mean, they're only relevant when they have, this kind of crazy amount of star power. So why, shorten that amount of time that you have those guys? That's the way I look at it. Sap, before we get out of here, do you want to talk about your frustrating week?
Well, we already kind of did. We kind of did. We touched on that. I want to end on maybe something a little more positive, because anything that I have to bring to the table as far as my favorite quarterback, my favorite baseball player, my favorite basketball player, my favorite tennis player, or whatever, not a good week. So, yeah, we dealt with that early. Let's end on a positive note. Maybe talk about someone who we pushed for this job months ago.
That's true.
That would be the perfect player to step onto the TNT table at some point. And TNT announced that last night, as you said earlier.
Yeah, Draymond Green's joining the TNT family as, I guess, a player analyst, which he's basically been doing for the past couple of years. But now he's, under contract. It's when time is available to him. So I guess it's, when the team has a couple of days in between games. I'm guessing. Is that how it's going to work, Seth?
Yeah, and I mean, with technology, you can do this from home. I mean, I don't think he has to fly into Atlanta or wherever they are. I mean,
but on game days, he can't be doing it, right?
No. I would hope not. Yeah, I mean, if they're playing, say the Warriors are playing a Tuesday night and a Friday night in California, then he could do Thursday night. don't know if he even has to fly into Atlanta. The team may say, look, we don't want you flying cross country and then back and be ready for a
that's
game.
No good.
He could do it. He could do it from his home. These guys can build home studios. We see that with everyone now since COVID. So you could do it that way, and you just, it'd be great to have him on the set, which he could have donated, or if he's on, the IR, you could go ahead and fly him in. I think he's going to be fantastic at it. He's incredibly smart. He's got a great personality. He's not afraid to say things. He's got a little bit of Rodney Harrison in him, which is exactly what you need. I mean, I'm watching NBC's pregame show last week, for football. They were doing the Tampa Rams game. Drew Brees, they're paying like $7 million a year to say nothing. Like, he says absolutely nothing. Rodney Harrison, who's been relegated to talking to Chris Collins' son for like a total of 3 minutes on the pregame show, he said more in like 90 seconds than Drew Brees has said all year.
I like Rodney Harrison.
Rodney's great.
I don't know why they demoted him.
Because Drew Brees is a former quarterback. I mean, the quarterbacks, they get the girls.
But Rodney Harrison, like Draymond Green, also kind of a dick. So
absolutely,
he's ripped the Patriots multiple times.
Absolutely. Look, he had the quote of the week last week. He was talking about Joe Burrow, how good he is as a quarterback. He says, look, I played with the worst quarterback ever in Ryan Leaf. I played with the greatest quarterback ever in Tom Brady. I'm an expert on this. And I was like, wow, he just said more there than Drew Brees or Tony Dungy or whoever else has said forever. So I think
football has not been able to replicate the what the NBA and TNT does, and neither is baseball. They don't want to. Tried.
They don't want to. But again, I don't think. Look, I don't think Adam Silver ever gets a hold of TNT and say, "Could you tell Charles and Shaq to tone it down?" No, they understand that what those guys bring are more eyeballs to the sport. Baseball, who's watching baseball, and you got A-Rod who's doing whatever, and Ortiz, who's like Santa Claus, and Frank Thomas, I'm not sure what he brings to the table. So there's not a lot going on there.
Well, who the hell are you going to bring in for baseball? These guys have no personalities. They're like, they train it out of them.
Yeah, bring Barry Bonds in. I'm sure he'll say something. But he's persona non grata. But in terms of football, don't want anyone to say anything. I mean, but remember, Bill Simmons got suspended by ESPN because he called Roger Goodell a liar.
Right.
So he had to sit out for 2 weeks.
The NBA and TNT are great partners. ESPN and the NFL it's a very one-sided relationship.
Yeah, they can't say anything. I mean, and I think there's ESPN has some good people on there. I think Rex Ryan actually does a really good job. I mean, he came out after the Buffalo Kansas City game and said, I have no clue what Sean McDermott was doing last night. First of all, you got to pooch kick it or squib kick it to kill 3 or 4 seconds. And then at that moment, when there's only 10 seconds left and Kansas City needs a field goal to tie the game up, hold, push, shove Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. Don't give him free releases. So he's being critical of the coach. I think he's really good at it. Marcus Spears, I think, is outstanding. I really like him. He's kind of the Kendrick Perkins of football. The big love guy. Who, in fact, they do a podcast together.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say they're good friends.
Oh, they're perfect. They're both Texans. They're just they're huge personalities. So yeah, I like those guys. Our guy Ryan Clark, I think, is awesome. I think he's one of the best analysts out there. So I think ESPN's allowed to do that during the week. But then when you get to the weekend, it's more of Teddy Bruschi, who I think is pretty analytical, but he's not going to rock the boat all that much. You got Matt Hasselbeck. Randy Moss is good. I think Randy Moss is good on Monday night. But no, TNT is the gold standard. It's not even close. Just because of Barkley and Shaq, and then you got Ernie as the perfect point guard, and then Kenny Smith brings something different. He's more of the deep thinker, the analytical guy, and then you got Shaq and Chuck, who got the personality. So yeah,
he's the straight man.
He's the straight man, and he's the straight man. Yeah, so I think you're going to be just fine with Draymond. And how much is he going to say about current players? He'll probably knock them. I don't think he's afraid to say anything.
Yeah, he's going to get fined a couple more times. Is what's going to end up happening.
While he's on TNT?
Thing, yeah, that's the one thing the NBA is not okay with is current players talking about other current players. It's a tampering thing. It's a tampering thing.
True.
Or officials.
I know. Officials too. Yeah, want to be careful with that. But yeah, that you could.
He'd already been fined. Remember for talking about Devin Booker a couple of years ago, which turned out he was kind of dead wrong about. Saying he needs to get out of Phoenix. He's doing just fine in Phoenix.
Yeah, when you send Chris Paul to an organization, everybody starts to play better, right? Because he's a force multiplier. Yeah, that is something. I wonder if the league's going to be, all on board with this. I mean, obviously they have. He's signed the deal and has been on there. But yeah, that could be problematic. But again, the NBA does a good job of this stuff, and I'm sure they'll dance around it just fine.
Yeah, they'll probably give him I'm sure they'll give him a little bit of leeway, but they'll probably, end up finding him a couple more times. Maybe they'll have like a 3-strike policy. It's like, hey, if you keep doing this, we're not going to let you, do this job anymore.
Because he has no filter. He has absolutely no filter, but that's why I like him. I mean, I think when he retires, he's going to be great at this.
He'll just be a permanent fixture if that's what he wants to do, which it's what it seems like he wants to do.
Yeah, and he's got some business dealings with LeBron. I think they are hooked up in some things, so he can do that. Well, not the stupidest thing to do to be in bed with LeBron when it comes to business. The guy obviously is pretty bright when it comes to making money. He's got
Red Sox owner LeBron James.
Absolutely owns 2% of the Fenway Sports Group. Yeah.
And I think they just brought in Maverick Carter too.
Yeah. No, I mean, these guys are smart guys. LeBron gets involved with something, it wins. So I think it's smart for Draymond Green to get involved with LeBron. And look, it was
he'll be just fine in his post playing career, Draymond Green.
All these guys will be. Yeah, they're all going to be fine. They've made plenty of money. I'm sure, if they are surrounded by the right people or just take care of their money, they're fine. Yeah, but I look forward to it because Draymond, he's one of my favorite players in the league. And I generally don't like the Marcus Smart types but he's like a highly skilled guy, right? Because he's a superb passer. And
oh yeah,
I mean, he sees the floor so well. He's a great defender. He can rebound, and he fits perfectly with that team. I don't think if he went somewhere else, we'd know much about him. But he's playing with the two greatest shooters in tandem, in Curry and Klay Thompson, and they've won 3 titles. And we remember he was the guy that kind of got in the grill of Kevin Durant. And look, he kicked LeBron in the you-know-what. And you would think at that point LeBron would want nothing to do with him. But LeBron is good at, keeping his friends close and sometimes keeping his enemies closer.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see. And if Draymond doesn't make the All-Star game, which I think he's going to get in because of the coaches, then I'm sure he'd be with them over the All-Star weekend too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure they'll, even if he's playing in the All-Star game, because it's kind of loose, they'll kind of probably do stuff with him. He won't.
They don't take it seriously. Well,
no. It'll be
not a lot to do in Cleveland either, I'd imagine.
No, so. And it'll look like the end of the Chiefs-Bills game where they scored 25 points in 2 minutes in regulation.
All right, Sap. Well, that's gonna do it for us here at the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. You can find us wherever podcasts are found. You can also find us on YouTube, youtube.com/Jet Stryer. We're presented by Full Press Coverage. Check out their website and check out our social medias at JohnSap25 at Jet Stryer. We'll be back next week with some new podcasts. See you, everybody.